Hello guys, I'm back with another video, and today I really just wanted to rant a little bit, really more or less about my generation, and kind of point towards why they're like searching for a more primal uh, thing, I guess you could say. Um, Most people my age are wanting to enlist in the military, and well, I guess let's take a step back. Like pre Iran war, there was a lot of people who wanted to join in the military, because they thought that America was back, or whatever they thought. And this then if that's kind of the reason why you're wanting to join, it's not a really wise decision to uh, depend your what's it called to like depend if you're going to enlist on the current president. So much as to say is I think it's more patriotic for a man to serve under a president whom they don't politically agree with, because in a sense, yeah, they have to follow whatever the president says, but more than the president, they submit to the Constitution. Um, that was a little off topic, but back to the pre-Iran thing. A lot of people really wanted to join up, and especially in my generation and Generation Z, a lot of people really wanted to join up. They have this bloodlust, almost this fantasy to get into a firefight and to be the last man standing while they're smoking a cigarette or whatever. And I think that's foolish, because if you were to ever ask any combat veteran who's actually been in the shit, they would tell you that they would have gave anything to not been in that situation and to be back home safe with their families. Because a lot of people, while we watch the American movies about the military and how we see um, the military is glorified and all these fights, and there's this badass hero who saves his platoon or whatever, and sometimes it's depicted, but oftentimes it's not. Um, the fallen comrades that they have, their brothers that they make along the way. You know, in a 1 hour, in an hour and a half movie, you can only give so much context to the story. But think most of these guys are together for 4 to 8 years, you know, training, living life. Their wives are friends, their children hang out, and then they get the call and they're deployed, and it almost seems within an instant they're not there anymore. And no one, some Hollywood movies will depict that side of it, but it's very little, and it's almost overshadowed by the overarching plot of the whole movie, which I would say is propaganda. Take that with what you will, um, but that yearning for our generation specifically, the millennials didn't really have it that much. I mean, they had 9/11, so I mean, I guess they had it a little bit, but a lot of the millennials were like punk rock stars, or maybe not rock stars, but they grew up in that era of emo, of scene, of like what's the word, rebellion, going against the traditions or whatever. So they didn't really have this yearning to go back to tradition. as so much as Generation Z does, or more or less the men. Some women are like that, but it's more prominent in the males. Um, but men are searching for, Generation Z men are fighting for having purpose in the society. They want to have a place where they're welcomed. They don't want to be shunned by society. They don't want to be hated by their fellow neighbor. Um, and that can go in any way. The liberals who are against the white men, even though they're white themselves. The blacks who think that they're the victims of slavery, even though that they never worked a labor job a day in their life. Um, the politicians. I mean, it's almost all of them are pinned up against the Generation Z men, and not just the white men. I know I focus a lot about Europeans and white men and Southerners specifically, but however, this also kind of encircles all of Generation Z men. They're being attacked, and they just want to be not necessarily loved, but the word is accepted, and they want to have a place in society, and they want to be respected more than anything. They feel like they have something more to prove. Um, and for most of Generation Z, not all of Generation Z, they're going back to traditions. A lot of them are converting to Catholicism, and we'll just step back. A lot of them are converting to Christianity, and then within Christianity, a lot of them are converting to Catholicism because they see a lot of issues within Protestantism. Because Generation Z really likes to research. They grew up in the age of the internet where they had access to all of these different sources. They had a lot. They fascinated over World War II. They glorified Vietnam. They like to learn about why JFK was killed and look into all the different theories. So from that perspective, we also, whenever we find out about Christianity, we like to deep dive into what the early church fathers taught, what the apostles written in their letters, all the lives of the different saints and the early church before there was a Bible, the councils. I think that's a positive thing within Generation Z, that they do seek out the truth. And sometimes they are astray, or sometimes they're moved into the wrong ideas, and then you kind of see them bounce from that to the right side. The right side being the truth, not necessarily the right or the left. But they and they're willing to admit that they've been wronged. They're willing to admit that they were lied to. They're willing to admit that that they were wrong, which is a very good thing to have. Accountability is one of the best attributes a man can have. Accountability, loyalty, uh, trustworthiness, honesty, all of these attributes are beneficial, and I would argue that they're fundamental for a man. But, Generation Z is a little different. But back to the thing, like a lot of these guys, they really don't even want to enlist to go die in the desert. That's not even why they're enlisting. They're enlisting because they want something a little more primal. They want something like friendship. They want camaraderie. They feel like they have no society. They feel like they have no purpose in the society. And a big issue of that is, take for example, Mexicans. If you've ever had a Mexican friend, you've probably been invited to one of their cousins or their sister's quinceañera, which is a big party that they throw for a 16-year-old daughter or niece, or whenever a woman who comes from Mexican ancestry, they have a very big celebration where in that party they're celebrating the womanhood of their daughter, their niece, their cousin, whatever. Um, but I mean, even with women, we don't have that in America, unless you come from that background. And I only bring that up to say is men don't really know when they're a man. A lot of these boys grow up to be man-childs, and they never really mature because, well, statistically, a lot of them didn't have fathers growing up. But apart from that, they didn't have, I guess, a ritual to bring them up into manhood. Like if you look at all of history, there was like some sort of ritual or annunciation or some sort of act or celebration where a man or a boy transitions into a man or a warrior or these types of things, and that's just not a thing in our current world, at least for America. And it's quite sad because it ends up with men feeling like they don't have worth. It ends up with men who are confused in their purpose for life. It strangles a lot of young men to lust after passions of the world. And from a Christian perspective, we sort of have that grounding. We have the letters from Paul, and he gives us ideas of how we ought to be, and Jesus obviously established a man and how he ought to be. And then Paul writes over, the man is over the wife, but the woman's also over the man. Their body is not their own, but their spouses, and many multitude of other things. Men are supposed to be leaders. Men are supposed to guide the next generation. Men are supposed to be upstanding citizens. They're supposed to stand for the truth and for honesty. They're not supposed to cave in to outside influences, more specifically other religions. And a perfect example of this is Judas. When Judas betrayed Christ, he was overcome by the moneylenders, and he was bought out. Another example is, or I guess a more accurate example for standing against other religions, would be Pontius Pilate. You see, Pontius Pilate, he was against the crucifixion. He washed his hands and said, "His blood is not on my hands." And even his wife said, "You ought not to crucify this man. He is innocent," referring to Jesus Christ. And his wife was correct. But Pontius Pilate gave in to the Jews because I would assume out of fear of being outnumbered. He felt as if his positions would be threatened, that it would cause riots, and then he would, make the Caesar mad. A lot of political things, but regardless, I mean, you can say all these different things and say these blood are not on my hands, but then it's like the sin of not doing something when you know you should. I forget the word for it. It's oh man, dude, I'm drawing a blank right now. Basically, if it's not like if someone asks you a question and you don't tell the truth, but you also don't lie. Omission. It's a sin by omission. That's what happened to Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate is an example of what not to do. You need to stand firm in your beliefs, politically, ideology, theology, all these things. You need to have a grounding for them. You don't need to just believe them because someone says you need to. You need to actually do a little research. But you need to also stand firm in that belief. And you also need to be willing to be wronged. Or you also need to be willing to be wrong. That's a better way of phrasing it. You don't need to think you know everything, because only a fool would do that. The wise men, they know nothing. That's how you need to be. Obviously seek out advice. Obviously, talk to your elders, and, read books and learn. These are great things. But do not become overcome by it. I guess in closing, relating back to the primal state, as a man, we're not really designed, especially in this cyborg, this media ran society where everything is screens in your face. As a man, you really need to go away from that. Go spend time in the woods. If you don't have a woods, you live in a city, go visit a national park. If you don't have a national park, well, just go visit your local park. Go walk around. Just put your phone off in the truck, lock it away. Go spend 1 hour just within nature, and just, if you're a Christian man, which I highly recommend you should be, though you need to do research to come to that conclusion, as I have, I think you should also, while you're out walking, is pray. And if you have a Bible, I think it's wise to read your Bible while you're, out at the park or whatever you do. That is just about all that I can come up with right now. But, yeah, I just want to thank you guys for watching my videos. There's not many of you, but I love each and every one of you followers who watch my videos. And God bless each and all of your families. And may the Lord bless you all. Goodbye.